Gordon Einstein, founding partner at CryptoLaw Partners, an international practice law firm providing professional legal services, blockchain, crypto, and other high-tech startups, ventures, and investment funds.
Hey everyone, it's Gordon Einstein. I am in Dubai, and it's my pleasure and honor to be here. And Natalie, thank you so much for the invitation. I really appreciate it. I thought the last speaker was very interesting because he mentioned some topics I'll be touching on, which is the involvement of lawyers in certain areas and whether or not that's a good or bad thing, and also the advent of DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, and how they might relate to DeFi and these other ventures. My presentation is going to be relatively brief. It's going to just sort of touch on an overview of the law of DAOs, the law of decentralized autonomous organizations, how one might use them, what's the origin of a DAO, how one might use them, the pros and the cons, and sort of their evolutionary status over time. And I'm honored to be the last speaker of the show. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to get my PowerPoint going, and I will try to keep an eye on the chat. So hopefully you're all out there in cyberspace watching. Let's see how we go here. Let me maximize the screen. Give me a moment, please, guys. Application window, there you go. One sec. I'm battling multiple screens. Oh, that should work, hopefully. Great. All right, let me just make that full screen. Oops. Oh my gosh, it worked. Amazing. Okay, so it's protecting your DAO from legal attacks. I'll skip the sort of early stuff, but just basically I'm a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer necessarily. Don't take this as legal advice. It's just a general overview. But I can tell you all, don't commit crime. How's that for easy? Okay, so what are DAOs? What does a DAO stand for? The term DAO. It stands for a decentralized autonomous organization. And what does that actually mean? Well, as most of us are probably familiar with at this point, it's a way of organizing group behavior and group governance and group cooperation on the blockchain. Now, groups have been around for a long time. Humans, it's very hard to be successful as an individual human, as an individual actor. And as life and society becomes more complex, it becomes progressively more difficult to do things as an individual. Humans naturally form groups to get big tasks done. There's a whole philosophy about how you can accomplish large things, whether it's Max Weber coming with the idea of a bureaucracy, or the idea of a nation, or the idea of a tribe, or the idea of a corporation, or a community, or a church, or an association. Just human beings naturally form groups, both for self-protection. There's a famous quote that I like, which is, we cooperate in order to compete. You can't cooperate just with yourself. You need to cooperate in a group. But what's neat about blockchain and what's neat about smart contracts is that they enable new forms of group organization, new forms of group activity to accomplish our goals. Now, why? What value do they add? Well, for the longest time, people either formed their groups in an ad hoc manner, meaning that they would sort of meet on the street or meet in a tribe and just do things based on certain sort of social understandings. And then in more recent human history, they've organized their group activities through legal forms, such as a company, such as a corporation, such as, say, if you're in Germany, a GmbH, or Aktiengesellschaft. There's all these different terms, or society, society limitada, if you're in a Spanish-speaking country. So there's these legal forms that allow us to perform activities, especially economic activities, but they have problems. They have problems because they're a little dated, they're a little long in the tooth, and they're not quite up to task to handle our global blockchain-based, high-tech, high-moving, distributed world. So the idea of porting over group activity and group coordination onto the blockchain, onto this decentralized network, is proving attractive, hence the DAOs. And so let's take a little historical back. What is a firm? And by firm, I mean, what is a company that's formed in order to conduct business? Well, sure, it's potentially a legal form, such as in America, you might have a Delaware corporation. But there's an economic philosophy behind it also, which is that a firm is basically a nexus of contracts. There's something called the theory of the firm, which is just that a company is just the aggregation of its contracts, maybe even its smart contracts. So can a DAO, can an organization that's living entirely on the blockchain, be acknowledged as, if not a legal firm, as a sort of traditional economic model of a firm? And the answer is maybe on a theoretical basis, but not necessarily on a legal basis. Because yes, these DAOs can be a nexus of smart contracts. Yes, they kind of fit the model or idea of a firm, but are they really legal people? Are they really legally recognized? And the answer is no, not yet. Now, why is that? Why is it the case that I can form, for example, a Nevada limited liability company, but I can't form a Nevada DAO that lives on the blockchain? Well, the simple answer is that you can't automatically take onto yourself certain corporate forms. You can't automatically take onto yourself certain company forms. It is a mandate or a license that's granted by the state to individuals who want to work together, such that another legal person is created, such that a corporation is created. So in the world we live in now, in 2021, for the moment, there's no such legal thing as a DAO that has a unique legal personality or legal characteristic separate from its individual owners. The prior speaker was getting to that a little bit, about whether or not the members of a DAO can protect themselves from liability or take on liability or enter into contracts. The answer is, at the moment, not really, but maybe they should. One of the things I'm working on is the idea that we can push out this idea of legally recognized DAOs on the blockchain. So why does legal personhood matter? Why do we want this? Why do we care about what governments think? There's an argument that maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should just move beyond the state, move beyond governments, move beyond traditional methods, set up economic organizations on the blockchain and just do what we want. And I have to admit, I feel a certain sympathy for that point of view. I would like to get to a world where governments don't grant the ability to act as a company or act as a corporation, but that's not 2021. In 2021, you need legal personhood. So what's reason number one? Well, once you get a group of people, how do you enter into contracts? How do you get into legal relationships? You need some sort of legal entity in order to be a counterparty to a contract. Right now, it's not really plausible that a DAO can be a counterparty to a contract. And on one hand, that's good because maybe someone can't enforce something against you. But on the other hand, contracts are great. They can make you insure yourself, get employees, pay people, plan for the future. Unless you're doing ad hoc barter-like exchanges, you need contracts in order to guarantee mutual performance over time into the future. Also, it's one thing when you have 2, 3, 4, 5 people trying to work as a team. That's maybe manageable without some kind of corporate form. But when you're working at scale, when you're working at the size of an IBM or a Microsoft or a Google or something, you need legal functionality to allow people to coordinate at that scale. And that only is possible through legal personhood that's granted by the state. And you get into all sorts of related topics like, could a DAO lease an office? Well, right now, a DAO could not lease an office. A DAO can't technically employ someone. It may be able to pay someone, but can't employ them in the legal sense. It can't create intellectual property and have that intellectual property clearly owned by the DAO. It can't necessarily license that property. It can't get insurance. And insurance matters. I mean, it's one thing when you're a rebel and no one knows who you are and you can just kind of cause all this potential harm to other people. But if you're trying to operate at scale and own real property in the real world, you need to have insurance. And at the moment, DAOs can't do all these things. Yet DAOs are very attractive because they allow all this functionality that isn't presently available with traditional legal forms. So what do you do about it? Well, you do have some options, and I'm just going to cover this at sort of a high level. One option is just not to worry about it and just operate on the blockchain, ignore governments, and make your money quickly and stay anonymous and hide after you make your money and live a good life. That's possible. People have done that. I think they did that a lot earlier in the crypto world, in the crypto times. But these days, it's dangerous because governments are aware of what's going on and they're watching. So you have to make a real strategic decision about whether you want to live your life that way. I can't really recommend that as a lawyer, to be honest. And even though part of me has an anarchist soul, that's not really what I'm proposing to my clients. What I'm proposing to my clients is that they form some sort of traditional legal entity that is tied to or tethered to the DAO, that takes directions from the DAO, and that legal entity can enter into contracts on behalf of that DAO, can create and license intellectual property on behalf of that DAO, can create employment relationships, can get insurance. And we actually made a decent amount of progress in this idea of creating a parallel legal entity to handle the DAO's legal affairs, such that the DAO can conduct operations in the real world. Excuse me. It's almost like the DAO is the mind, and the legal operation is the body, or the DAO is the brain, and the legal operation is the body, so that there's a way for this thought process that's happening up on the blockchain to have a real life impact on the world. So what kind of legal form would you want to create to represent your DAO? There's of course many permutations out there. One thing I've been working on a lot is various forms of Swiss entities. Switzerland has pretty advanced law relating to crypto entities, and traditionally people have been looking at Swiss foundations. Swiss foundations are good for software development. They're good for managing grants. They're good for sort of continuity over time, where you don't need something to change. The newer thing we've been looking at that maybe doesn't replace foundations, but it augments your selections, is to form a Swiss nonprofit association. The word for an association in German, which is one of the primary languages in Switzerland, is a Verein. So if you want to look up the legal law about associations in Switzerland, just Google, Schweizer Verein or something like that. Those are a little bit more flexible than foundations. Foundations tend to have a locked-in board of directors that doesn't change so often, and foundations tend to have a locked-in legal mandate that's very difficult to change. Associations are more flexible in that they can have members, just like a regular association can, not just a board, and that they can evolve their mission over time. And you can have decisions made by the membership rather than a very narrow board, which kind of matches the idea of a DAO. When you think of a DAO, you don't think about 4 or 5 people running this distributed organization, because otherwise, why would you even have a DAO? A DAO evokes the idea of tens, hundreds, or even thousands of people or entities or robots, who knows, interacting with each other on sort of an ad hoc basis, coming and going, having the option to do something, but not necessarily doing something. So I think the idea of an association more closely matches what we think of when we think of a DAO than a foundation does. So I would encourage everyone who's watching this, who's interested in DAOs and creating legal representation for DAOs, to take a look at associations, specifically Swiss associations, because they seem pretty functional. And I think that's a good overview of DAOs and how you want to approach things. I think I'll add in there also that when you're coming to DeFi, you don't necessarily need a DAO. You don't necessarily need a foundation. You don't necessarily need an association, but they're potentially useful. If you want to get out of the, whenever you have one person running a platform, whether it's Uniswap or Sushi Swap or whatever it is, whenever you have a single person running a platform, if that person is well intentioned, if they're like a Vitalik, that's okay. But there's always the problem of an exit scam or a mistake that can be made by one person, and that leaves your organization vulnerable. You do need, if you're trying to create a system that has legs or has governance over time, you really do need to go down the DAO route. And do you necessarily need a parallel legal organization in the real world to represent your DeFi project? Not necessarily. You might be able to just get away with a DAO, but to the extent you want your DeFi project to have real world interaction, or to be able to work through gateways, especially gateways into fiat world, it could be potentially useful to have a legal form like an association that takes its direction from and is dependent upon the DeFi platform and the DAO that's behind there, but nonetheless can enter into contracts, can nonetheless interact with regulators, and can form law and do all sorts of neat things. So this is an evolving area, obviously. I encourage anyone who's interested in this to reach out to me. I'm heavily involved with a Swiss association, nonprofit association called the Emerging Technology Association. I'll say that again, the Emerging Technology Association. It's ETA, it's emergingtech.ch. We're really exploring this idea of creating a legal framework for DAOs, a legal framework for forms that are associated with DAOs, so that we can push regulation forward and allow DAOs to do things that traditional companies or corporations can. So I don't know if we have any time for questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, or try to. And let's see if there's anything in the chat or anything we can hit. Or Natalie, do you want to jump in and let me know?
Warren, thank you very much for your presentation. We don't have any questions. So
that was pretty fast, but you know, it's a big topic, and I just wanted to kind of hit it. And I know I'm the last speaker, so I want everyone to go enjoy their beers wherever they are.
Yes, thank you very much once again for jumping into this presentation, into this conference. So I hope you enjoy your time in Dubai, and I hope to see you soon in Ukraine. So thanks once again.
Well, actually, it's funny you say that. I am heading off to, I have an ultimate destination, which is not Ukraine, but I'm stopping on Ukraine on the way to that destination. So I'm off in 2 days. So I will see you there.
See you there. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a great night. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Bye.